So welcoming your body to a restorative practice today. We're going to have our bolster lengthwise on our mat and then a blanket at the back that's flat. And then you have a rolled up blanket at the very base, okay? So we're kind of regardless of your height, maybe it's best that we all kind of start towards the end, the short end of the bolster. I have a belt kind of buckled pretty firm around my upper legs. I also have a couple blocks and my balls here. So if you have one of those, get it nearby in your sandbag. And now as you lower back on the bolster, you can almost not get far enough forward on this bolster to set your pattern to dive back. So you're going to lower back and you'll feel maybe a little awkwardness right with your neck to get there, but go ahead and slide back and get a feel for this bolster stuck in your back. Okay, it's stuck in the upper back zone, so it's pushing in and causing that frequency of length to happen in the front body. This is really more of a front zone, front bones circulation. Okay, it's opening of the chest. Okay, now we stretch the legs down and see if you can get the legs to that blanket. Let's say the blanket just doesn't work right now for you, that's okay. You can go minus it if you really like to have a little bit of height. And if your back is a little sensitive right now, you can always make the blanket higher under your feet. It's typically done with a blanket or blocks under the feet. It's kind of hard to use the blocks because they fall over, but the blanket's usually easy to push into. Now I've got my belt secure. It's almost quite tight. So I want to have that intensity, so not to cut off the blood flow, and so I don't go completely numb in my legs, but I want to feel as if I have kind of a uni leg. Okay, sort out things, get a sandbag, slide it across so that it's on your thigh lids. And if you prefer the sand across the ribs, not the thigh lids, you can place it a little bit higher. Okay, once you kind of decide, well, should my legs stay straight? Should they bend? If the back is a little sensitive, you need to bend your knees. That's clearly the indicated decision there, and that could be okay for you here. Or let the legs feel that they are relaxing down. And then open out through the upper reservoir of the lungs. So this is higher space in the lung force, and of course, we have quite a bit of that lung capacity, upper body and upper back. I don't know what the percentage of the lung in the back, but it's quite high. It's higher than 65, I know, so it's a pretty high percentage of lung in the back of the body. So you're pushing into that lung space with your bolster. So I want you to focus on how that pushes and opens up the breathing. And if you have glasses on, you might shift them off for these few moments, just getting your body centered and just get a feel where the shoulders motion back. Using the props for a settling experience, depending on them, even if you decide to move the feet a little farther out. I know the belt might feel a little awkward, but it is helpful if you can cope with it to integrate both sides. So breathing in the belly body. You try to move the breath so it's not stuck in the upper chest, but it actually flows down through the abdomen as the diaphragm moves that direction. It's not anywhere else in the body. It couldn't take a new assignment, so it stays there. And as you feel that lower abdomen have a little bit of friction because your front body is in a toned shape, see if you can just push the limits of expression with the breathing. So inhale, filling that lower torso. And exhale, settling back. Center. Now, if your neck tilt is bothering you, you can always scrunch up the blanket so it's holding under your neck better. Some will prefer that little bit of a tuck of the blanket and the head would center back, and it might be on not as much of the blanket as the mat. So you can try that version as well. And it's taught both directions. So you have to kind of feel, okay, this is good. I like the blanket support, just flat. Okay, so give the moments here to combine awareness of breath and kind of this flat shape, but there is a little bit of a lift right in the rib section. There's certainly an accessibility to the ribs. Okay, now you're going to slide the sand off. Giving it a few moments there. Unbuckle. Keep the belt closed by the sides. And then feel if you can lift up the knees so they point up, the bottoms of the feet on the ground, so you walk your feet in. And then we'll take a wild variation here. So you have had the bolster this way, it is right now. And what we're going to work is shifting it so it turns the other direction. Okay. And you're an animated object, right? So it's a different thing than applying this to something that's not human. So you have to walk your feet in closer towards your seat. Your feet have to be as wide as the bolster. Okay. And if you like to step up on the bolster right now, just have that experience of a little bit of this inversion, or let the legs swing up, those kind of things. But what I want us to do is have a nice balance for the pelvis. So my feet are on the ground and I have my blanket flat under my head now. And I lift up the hips and then I reach down with my hand. Usually one hand will do, but sometimes you have to get both involved. You have to get both involved eventually and turn your bolster so it's across under the back of your pelvis. So now my bolster is no longer lengthwise, it's across, horizontal, under my back, pelvis. And then I bring the feet up off the ground completely. And I take a moment to get my body sorted out on this change of support. And then I get a ball or a block, either's fine, between the knees. And I want you to loosen up the threads of the back after we just did that kind of deeper back bend. So you'll hold on to that ball with the knees, squeezing into it, and let the knees just shift side to side. Keep it simple. And let it get a feel like you're kind of swinging the knees over so they can kind of frolic, but it's not you're not tossing the ball, but almost as if your legs are kind of getting that swing. I mean, if you had your hands holding the ball and you're moving it side to side, there'd be a kind of a joy with that movement. So feel that the back spaces can kind of swing a little bit so that you can loosen up the low back. Of course, caution if you have a little reservation about the pressure or too much. So you have to navigate movement individually. Okay, breathing is a little random on this event, but do breathe. Okay, now when you move back in center, you're kind of halfway to this next shape. You have the knees as they are pointing up. But when you lose the ball, I want you to draw one of the legs. So let's go right knee in towards the chest and let the left leg release down. You've got a blanket probably still somewhere that might be kind of nice to have under that left foot. Okay, and then change the side, but feel that kind of drag of movement when you have a knee clutched in and you move it towards the ribs. Good, and you get a feel of the opposite leg, just kind of lazy, just let it go. You know, the switcheroo, one more time each side, is important that you feel a little bit of muscular kind of wind up. And then when you move that right knee now in towards the right side of the rib cage, get a feel for the pull. Be careful of the knee, right? You don't want to be under the patella. You don't want to pull above. You want to be at the back of that right thigh when you squeeze in versus at the knee site. And then last time, switch sides. So find that switch time. What is your pattern in your core muscles when you switch the legs between sides? It's probably some sort of habits you have with just the movement transition. Okay, and now we'll bring the right knee in, we'll get a belt. The left leg can be straight. I'm going to bend my left knee for a little while so the bottom of the foot is down to kind of get my hips supported in this next position. So I want you to take your belt here and you want to grasp a hold of the buckle piece and then connect it. And with that connection, whether you have a cinch belt, any of the different rings that belt these together, you want to make it connected into a loop. Okay, so you got a pretty big loop because it's going to hook under your right foot now. And then from that length, you're going to combine that reach and then place the belt all the way to the center of the back of your skull. So I would kind of prepare your focus here. So you got plenty of belt, that's key. You can always make it a little bit shorter, but if it's too short to start, then your neck has to kind of work out some of its kinks to get the lift. So you might have plenty of belt. It's usually quite a big loop that you need for this. And then if my left knee is bending, it's probably quite easy for my tilt of my pelvis to start. So have that belt to the shelf at the back of your head, and then get a sandbag. Oh, see, lots of prop sorting out today. Get a sandbag on the front of that left thigh and then let the left leg stretch down. Okay. You've got to have plenty of belt for this one. So when that length occurs for the left thigh with the sand, figure out how this bolster supports your back. If it's a little cranky in your back muscles, the bolster may not be high enough under your back. So you want to feel like this is really supporting your lumbar spine, the bolster is. So that's just 5 of the lower vertebrae. They're pretty chunky vertebrae, right? So they're very bulky. If they're doing good, you want them to be pretty bulky. And so as that lift is with the leg, it's kind of effortless after a while. You have all these things holding you up. So if the mind can get into that trance of being supported, that would be a nice trance to get your mind into. I feel supported, keep it going. So have the access of your head leaning back towards the blanket. If it touches the blanket as your arms open out, that's okay. If it's even kind of mildly hovering. And then with that right leg steeped in circulation, hamstring, calf, instead of trying to go for more, you might push your foot into the belt and see how that feels on your neck. Relax your throat. Good. Yeah, and if you feel that circulation in the back landscape is a little iffy, like your back muscles, then you can always go with the left knee bending and putting that foot on the floor. You can always go with that one. That would ease the back. And why would we have it straight? Well, we're trying to access the quadricep and psoas, get some length in this midsection. Breathing slow through the nose. Exhale out through the nose or the mouth. Be a little free with that opportunity. Okay, now where you feel that length at the neck base, I want you to feel length there. And if it does feel kind of grippy, this might be a new excursion for you. I mean, I find that I've done this a while, but then I notice, oh, maybe I'm holding more here than I thought. So if you do find that happening, you might Just try to let the head lower back. Then the hamstring will feel more. So other areas will take over the intensity. But when you switch sides, why don't we just move our sand onto our abdomen area, okay, and bring our hands to the back of your head. Slide your left leg up, or bring the left foot up into the belt. And then when you switch the right leg down, that leg might be, feeling a little tingly, feeling some circulation, trying to transition. So before you get that sand on the right leg, you might bend the right knee, put the foot on the floor, and kind of get a feel for now where this left leg stands. It is kind of on a stand, isn't it? It's standing upside down. And when it's like this, hyperextension might be more evident on one knee than the other. So if you don't like staring at your leg, that's okay. You can close your eyes and just kind of sense the difference, and then move the sand to the right thigh if you haven't already. The right leg stretches down. There's likely, even into awareness of your bones, some differences from one side to the other. It could be a calf hamstring ratio, really can vary. How you feel muscular loosening. And then when that arm pattern opens, you don't lose your sandbag, let the neck lengthen. If it feels like it's tightening in your neck, then it's not a good setup. So you might need to slide the belt so it's a little bit higher on the back of the skull. Kind of keep working it until the leg is up. And I imagine you might have still a sensation difference on one leg than the other. So we'll work with it over time. But take the time to kind of investigate how the top of your thigh, how the hip is working, and then simply focus on the back of the leg. Breathing. Relax the right foot if it's trying to force a flex. Okay, and let's just kind of simply move our hands to the belt and the back of your head and slide it off and let your head lower back instantly onto the blanket. And then once the belt kind of has moved your hair along to a new form, reach your right hand up for the belt and cross the left leg over to the right. You'll lose your sand. It's not going to stay on. Okay, so let that left leg cross over and get a feel for pressing through the foot. Your right hand holds the belt. This is a nice one to get that access into the hip. So you get to decide the intensity. You're the intensity decider. So if I kind of pull the leg with movement, it's not the smartest move for the joint. So what I like to do is feel the intensity crossover, find a spatial connection for the leg that I can also, really feel up into the hip itself. Feel the top of the outer left leg. And then just kind of stay with that. Just breathe. You can always bend your left knee. Okay, now between the two sides, what I want you to do is bend through the left knee completely, so it's a strong bend, just like we did when we had knee to chest. That's strong. And then change the foot that's in the belt. Right foot comes up, right leg straightens, left hand holds the belt. We cross the right leg over to the left, final side. Okay, so get a feel for that crossover in the lower half of the body, and that upper half of the body, right, stays kind of in a real stillville. There you go. Good. Screen feet. Okay. So we have the rib cage centered towards the sky. Right? We don't want the ribs to transition to the left side. We'll get there next pose. But cross over so that right hip feels it. If your left leg doesn't like to be in this specific frame, you can always bend your left leg and let that leg kind of go towards the left with the right leg. It's not a bad idea. You could be strict with your pose too and have the left leg straight-ish. I'm going to choose that today just for variety. Okay. And one side might feel a little more engulfed in intense circulation for the hip itself. So you can massage it, you could scratch it, see if you can get that hip awareness. And then we kind of suction it in. We bend through the right knee. And then we put both feet up into the belt, but now we'll just stretch the feet out. I would just prefer that you hold the belt versus let it go right now on this one, because we just integrated one hip to the next hip and we pushed to open up through the lateral side. Now it's like opposite, right? Adductors, flushing out. Okay, hope you can still see me. The lighting, the natural lighting today, it seems a little shifty because of I can just tell. I'm not using any regular light today, so hopefully you can still see me okay. Okay, so get a feel for pushing out with the feet. Now, is it like I turn my feet out unnaturally? No, it's like you're pushing out into the belt. So you try to widen that stance without the knees turning in too much. Okay, and then pull the belt down towards your ribs, elbows relax, and then the feet will go together. You'll probably end up with the belt on your ribs, and then walk your hands up as far up as they'll go with the arms straight with the feet together. Okay, so this is the legs up version. That we'll do this at the very end, but use the wall for support. But I want you to maximize the foot circulation right now. So get that belt to the ball of the feet and pull down. Don't let the feet suction the soles together. You want to have the feet facing both bottoms of the feet, foot bottoms, to the ceiling. Foot bottoms are up, especially the heels trying to lift as well, so you can stretch your calves. Oh, it's only temporary, they say. But the calves are a nice positioning right now for circulation. And just reversing the effects of gravity on your vascular system here. Okay, now bending, pulling the belt in and your knees, and then take the belt off. And as you flow out into side sage, let's keep your belt, if it's still buckled up, keep it buckled up to the side. And then when you roll to your left, you might have to be a little cautious here for your neck. So I would turn your head to the left when you roll out. Right, and then you slide down. Probably the neck is the place that we can work with on getting in and out of things. Just gonna take it easy. Okay, so get the blanket at the base and then put it back with the other blanket so the blankets get to meet up. So they stack together. Okay, yeah, all right. You can see even the lighting's going in and out. Cloudy day. Okay, block is over to the back. Not all of us use this block, but I'm finding the higher ledge is better for my shoulder. And then we have a ball on the inside of that right leg. So I have it on either knee or the inner thigh. You get to choose. But when you start to lie into your left side, have sand. If you don't use sand, that's fine. You can do any poses without it. But it might add some circulation and grounding, getting you more calm in the pose, kind of pushes you into the pose a little more. So when we start to stretch that right arm over, we're going to get a feeling of reaching through the right arm over to the block. Okay. And then let that waistline or the waist side band elongate. Okay, so get a feel for that left knee towards the left thigh towards the bolster. Right, the right side body lengthens. Good. And then when you're lengthening through that right side body, you might be kind of peeling open towards the ceiling a little bit, kind of turning the waist. You might be quite focused on being on the side exactly. And let the weight of that right leg relax onto the ball if you're using that. If you have a block, you can use that instead. Okay, relax the throat. The breathing cycle shifts a little bit on the side so that your focus is on costal breathing through the ribs. I guess it's throughout the ribs. Relaxing the eyes. You know, the nice thing about this pattern today is these, we're going to do this kind of trio pose set, which I find very peaceful. So we have this side reach. Of course, this depends on how much prop lift you have with your blanket and bolster. You want to feel that combination of support. Okay, now when we do start to roll now, remember the neck goes with you. So you turn to your left, roll your head just like you move your ribs. And if you have a block overhead, you're going to slide that down towards your bolster. And then you're going to come up, kind of shift left and then come up. And we're going to set up for Supta Baddha Konasana. Okay, so you'll have your blankets towards the back, but let's do classic. So we're going to have our blanket at the bottom. You can roll it if you like a little more height. You know, this has been our kind of trend on this one. We have it a little bit rolled. You can just kind of double stack it there. Fine. And the bolster goes up, and then the blanket goes on, and then you turn towards the foot of your mat, and you've got your blocks under your legs. I have mine pretty high up. They're at the mid height, so it's just easy. I don't have to energetically hold things. I just let them rest. That's kind of a wise choice. Then I have the belt. I'm going to take the belt in that loop already and then bring it overhead around my waist. And then once I bring the belt from my waist to the feet, I tighten it up. Not required to use a belt. If you do this pattern, feet together, knees out, blocks under legs, perfect. You can do it without the belt. But if I have a belt, I slide it really low down the back of my waist, and so it's at the eyebrows of the buttocks. Mine is pretty secure. It's pretty full pressure on my ankles. Now we're doing this to calm the nervous system, right? The belt is a calmer. This is ideally going to be helpful. So I have my buckle in a place I can get out of it if I need to, or tighten it, one or the other. And then as I lower back, I can add my sand across my rib intersection up here, okay? So across the sand, sounds like you're crossing through some sandy dunes, huh? Cross the sand on the ribs, okay. And then when you get a feel for that height of the sand, it might slide down. Your blocks might be a little bit too much pressure right now, so you might see if you can tilt them a little bit so they're kind of contoured with the leg. I kind of like it when my blocks are tilted, as long as they don't fumble and fall over, to make sure they're really committed in the angle that they are at. Yeah. Okay, and then once the shift is in the ribs, if it's possible for you to let your arms rest here, or if you prefer to bring your arms back and hold on to your elbows. Yeah, it's a little bit more of an intensity with holding on behind you, but not required. But you might like to get that feel in your arms, stretching the arms, kind of in a different familiarity for your shoulders than their daily habit. You can fidget, change your props anytime. But if you find that you can center after you fidget, you might be deciding to fidget again. But see if you can change the crossing of the arms if you are holding on to the arms. If you have your arms beside you, simply continue. And we'll all end up there. So with that rib movement against the sand, if you don't have sand, but you want something, you can use a bag of rice. Even just anything that's touching on your body, that's a reminder of the breath value here. And then let go of the arms. Let the arms lower down, feel the shoulders back. The key is the feeling of the shoulders back. So if there's anything you bring some emphasis to, it's that position. Just like we started when we had the bolster lengthwise under the back. It's easy to get a feeling of the shoulders moving in towards something more narrow. So here it is, it's narrow again under your back. It's the same length, but you are resting on it different, right? It's not, it's under your head this time as well. So get a feel of the movement of breath. Okay, now we're going to stay with this design for the spine. It stays supported, but we'll move the sand, we'll unbuckle, and I want you to get a ball and place that belt so it's no longer tying your legs up, right? So it's a little bit away from that grip on your skin. And then as you lift up that left knee to point up, the bottom of the foot down, cross the right foot to that left knee and then place the ball to the outer left upper thigh. Tilt your body weight to that ball. Yeah, if there's a block kind of in your path, you can kind of scooch it to the side. It could be a helper, actually. You might find, oh, that block ended up next to my knee and it feels helpful. But I find getting the outer side of my left foot to relax. So I'm kind of leaning into the side of my left foot on the ground, right? And then my right foot is not touching the ground. And my left hand holds the right knee. And I'm guiding my knee towards what I think is me, right? Towards my upper zone where I'm speaking from. So I'm pulling that right leg to sensation. Now you likely feel the circulation through your hip. Maybe somewhat like we did recently with the belt, holding the leg, crossing over. Just kind of notice in a moment if that's a repeat sensation. It's starting to loosen up. And truly let the body weight kind of sink into that ball. Let go of the knee. Let the legs move back to where they were just moments ago. Uncross right foot Left foot crosses to right knee. And then we add the ball to the upper outer right thigh. And then we tilt. Again, if the block is in the way, move it aside. But you'll feel, so kind of from the awareness of centering the waist. It's nice use of props where we can align a part of the body so it's in like good form, where it's like it's an equilibrium for certain in the centerpiece of your body, from your ribs up to the shoulders. It's pretty balanced with the bolster under you. But then when you hold your left knee with your right hand, you're working the lower body quite a bit. You're pulling, right? You're integrating both stability in the upper body and flexibility through that left hip. Yeah, left arm could stretch back. I know some of us, this is our pattern we've done, is the arm goes back and the leg crosses over. But you can also keep it relaxed besides you. Okay, so find that positioning of the side of the right foot on the ground, the feeling of holding the left knee and pulling it towards you. Okay, now when I start to release this, this will be interesting because we'll go to side sage from here. Now this left hip is going to be moving from this direction, crossing over, and then we're going to fan through the front of that thigh into the quad. So I find this an interesting detail. So if you touch the other left hip area, just the region, and you slide your fingers towards your right hand, that whole area has had some dose of circulation. Two different poses now. So now when we let go, you're going to be working into the, just not very far away from that area, but it does feel different when you change just, a millimeter away. So you come back to center, move the ball momentarily, uncross, and then kind of squiggle your way over. You're going to shift your ribs over to the right. And then I just put the ball down by my knee and then turn my bolster. Now, you could do side sage this way. We used to do it this way, right? This used to be what we did long ago, but then I don't think that was the best thing for our shoulder joint. Pull it this way. It's just not a smart, fast roll there. So we've shifted to make it a little bit more shoulder ease. But if you want to do it that other way, it feels good for you, and you have some really sturdy shoulders for that, you can do it. Okay, so you'll take that block overhead, and then when you use the ball, it's on the inside of that left leg. So now we've really moved just a little bit from the side of that left leg, and if the leg stretches back, you go a little bit to the front. Okay, everything's at small amounts, isn't it? It's like homeopathic practice. Okay, we got our sand, we have our left arm over. And then as we extend through the waist, get a feel for your range of motion in your torso. Okay, so get a feeling as the weight of your body leans into the ground and the props. Not only the ground, but your blanket, your bolster. Your sand could be this way, it could be lengthening from your ribs down to your hip. You could keep it up on the ribs, higher up, like if you like that stretch in your ribs. Some of us will go a little higher. We'll even kind of test the stretch into the pec and into the shoulder. But if it pinches up here in the shoulder, this would not be a smart move to keep pushing if it pain, right? So if that's happening, you might find it's better for you to open your left arm instead and be kind of on the back of your head on the blanket. You might feel better with the arm down to the bolster, your head to the right side, or on your side. Okay. So find the position that's relative for you. If you put your arm overhead and it just feels like the arm is tight, that's different. You feel a little bit of tension pooling in the shoulder, but when you get out of it, it releases like blood flow, right? Flushes in and out. That's what that feeling it would be. So that's okay. But deciding for yourself, brain heavy. Hopefully not brain heavy with thoughts, but brain heavy onto the blankets. And design the breath. Thoroughly inhale. And fully exhale. Right, exfoliate the ribs. Take a few more breaths here. Okay, so we can feel how the right leg is in this simple bending shape. And as your left arm opens out, or it just simply shifts over to the right arm, which is fine. I want you to come over to that right side. Remember, let your head turn with your positioning. Now, when you come back up to center this time, what we're going to do is we're going to come up and we're going to sit up on our bolster. It'll be a little funky, but fun, I think. And we'll take the blanket stack in, move the block away, and then we'll go right into pigeon with the right leg down, left leg back. So we kind of follow the line of circulation that we just are working through. So I'm trying to keep it, even though you might not feel quite like you're choreographing that way, try to work with the balance now. I'm using 2 blankets. I kind of like that, actually. It seems a little more supported. But you can have your blocks under your hands in front. You can have your elbows on the ground. But if you're confused, what is my right knee doing? So I really have the right leg. And, just like you have, if you're sitting cross-legged, the right foot is towards the bolster and the right knee points out to the kind of kitty corner of the right side and the left leg stretches back. Okay, so you're supported in your hips. Okay. Now the elbows, when they lower down, will give you an increased sensation in the hip. And if the back leg is heavy, which I would prefer here, you can always put your hand on your back, right here in the back of the pelvis. But of course, it only intensifies it. So you have to go kind of weigh your choices here. But let's try to keep it so the spine is central here in a natural arch, like you do in cow pose, right? You have the arch of the spine. Okay, and then feel the body weight into the elbows. There's got to be some weight into your arms. Okay, kind of scan how much this is in that right hip. How much intensity is over there? Is it the top of the leg? Is it into your back of your pelvis that you feel it? And try to keep semi forward, right? You don't have to, this is a supported forward bend, right? It's not an unsupported bend. You can always use blocks under your elbows to be even more supported, or like a blanket or another bolster. Or a chair, that's a good one too. But when you take it to the next side, I want us to just be real simplified. Okay, so you're going to let the ribs move to the right, and then you'll bring your hands in. It's not all of us do it this way, but one option. Swing the left leg from behind you. Don't knock anything out. And then towards the left leg forward and the right leg back. Hopefully you didn't knock over any pets you have around you. Whoa, taking a nap. Okay, so the left knee is out. And likely it's a fresh hip. Okay, talk about hips, it's a fresh hip. So we have this positioning of our joint, right, to work on influencing in the density can be helpful. So, But you want to be careful as well. So I think having the support is good. I know what we taught it a couple times in the last few weeks. I did it without the bolster and it seemed a little weird. I didn't feel quite as comfortable with it in my hip. So kind of back to a little bit of our restored quality. So the arms could be pushing the floor away. The forearms could be down. This might be real nice for your back muscles to have your arms down. You can also have them on blocks. Right, so I would just put them in underneath either my hands or my elbows. You might find, oh, it's a little easier on my back. So, or maybe it feels like it's a little more core stretch because your belly doesn't kind of drop as much in this position. It's more pulled forwards. You know, that's a consideration, is the stomach, directional balance here for any of the poses. Okay, so give it a few moments. You can imagine this might be setting us up for some standing work because we're getting some power into the hip joint. Who knows, maybe it helps to get that sculpted sensation in the hip. But get a feel for the body weight down. Breathing across the skin of the back, so feel that movement of the back muscles. And you have a good amount of weight into your leg, both your legs now. Okay, so when you come up to, towards table pose, let's have our blocks to the sides. We'll access them soon enough. So toes under right foot. And then I want you to work your way on coming back to hands and knees. So it might be that you have a different way than this. You might kind of bring your other leg forward and then kind of crawl into it. It's a crawl position. So when the knees go back and down, I want you to just move your bolster. Actually, let's use it a little bit. We'll turn it lengthwise in center. We'll take a blanket off. Yeah, you want to be a little less blanket here coming up. And then when we move our knees onto that blanket one, about hips distance apart, get a feel for the arms straight down to the fingers open. And it's not just a straight arm because you have a hand opening, but as the fingers stretch apart, you're going to round your back and then get a feel what rounds your back. Is it your ability to pull the muscles in the core in and up? Is it the spine flexibility? How do we get this motion in the back comfortable? So let's let the toes relax and walk the hands forward and then lower down. If you want your bolster a little farther forward, you can always reset it just a tiny bit of change. But when you come back to this upward facing dog pose, or upward turning nose, you get a feel of that length in the front body and the strength right through the arms. Okay. Now feel when you lower your torso, your stomach, right, to your ribs down on the bolster. And you have your elbows by your side, so you're in more of a controlled shape for spine strength. So this is definitely a posterior core and spine strengthener. Okay, so you've got your hands besides your bolster and your elbows by your sides. Okay, so we're not taking any real rest yet here. But as you press down to your wide span of fingers, if I slide them back, it doesn't make it easier to get up. If I slide them forward, it might. So you can play with this balance in your back muscles. So you lift up. I like stretching my hands forward on this shape. It feels kind of nice, and the squeeze of my back, especially around your kidneys. It's a good little kidney juice. That sounds kind of funny, but kidney juicing. Okay. And then as I lower down my ribs, we're doing a little more yin yoga right now for a moment, some extra time for the back muscles, core muscles. So if my hands were again closer under my shoulders, this might be a little more intense. My hands look a little bit forward. You choose, and then push to get up, brain lift, spine strength. Yeah, my head is really, it's an extremity here. So I've got to be a little careful on how my head moves out of my spine. Okay, now lower down the ribs, kind of get a feel of that rib kind of sculpting. Hands come back, push yourself to table. It's hard to have your hands way far forward to come up to table pose. And now we'll take our bolster, we'll turn it. You can just kind of push it to the side of the mat or in the front. We'll take a couple blocks. Let's try this. I know we may have different feelings about blocks under hands depending on your wrist, but if I put my blocks flat, I've got them on a sticky mat, so I probably won't slide too far out. And I toes under, lift up the knees, and try to get into your downward dog with your blocks under your hands. Now, the nice thing about this bolster here is I suppose it would hold you from sliding too far out if you have it in front of your mat, in your front. But get a feeling of your knees separating, right? So they're not squeezing together. The feet are stepping apart in a wide stance, pretty much for your dog pose. And depend on your shoulders here for a moment. Okay, step the left foot into the midline, right in the center, and then step the right foot forward between your blocks and your hands, of course, and then turn your blocks up to the highest setting. Make it a little easier on your whole bone structure. And then circulate for that right knee to be above the ankle, and maybe this back leg, you're stretching the heel towards the floor. Maybe it's not quite getting that ground position, but you can feel the foot trying to stretch behind you. You know, parallel, more parallel than turned out. Okay. So I want you to get a feel for that right knee above the ankle. And then if you are possible to lower the back knee to the blanket, make sure that you're a little bit careful on that. So when I lower, I'm on a blanket for sure. My right knee is moving forward to stretch the skin on the front of the back thigh. And I'm trying to stretch my left quadricep. And my blocks could go in towards the midline a little more if I feel like I want more thigh stretch. The closer in I get with my blocks, or the higher up I get on my hands onto my leg. But again, we're not trying to compete here with ourselves to do more pressure, but I want you to get a good feel of that stretch to the front of that left thigh. Really feel as the movement of lunging. Okay. All right, everyone's got a block. I think we all at least have one. So you're going to have your block on your left hand, and it's not in front of the left knee, right? If you look at the radius, it's a little bit out to the left side. I want you to make sure you have enough balance here for where we're going. So what I start to do is my right foot scoots a little to the right side as if if it knows something's coming. But the key would be my right knee aims forward, and then I move to the right arm lifts up, open to the right side. So I take a little twist, okay? But keep it simple. So you're not trying to push your left thigh farther down nor your right knee farther forward. You try to plug into the right foot. So this undersurface of the right thigh is getting stronger is the key. So I try to keep it so my knee doesn't wobble out. I just lift, right? Then I have weight bearing. Okay, lower the right hand, lift up the back knee, so toes under. Try that again. So the back knee is up now, right arm turns open and up. We safe? Okay, good. So as you turn, you've got that circulation through that right hip. I think the only place where I have a little challenge is to keep my right knee above my ankle. It like starts to sway back a little bit. So to be very specific on stacking the bones here. We'll call this one bone stacker. Okay, so get a feel when you turn the waist, breathe. Careful, lower the right hand down. Stretch the toes up on the right foot so you come into a reverse lunge. If you can't see it, it's my right foot, the toes are up. I've got my two blocks supporting under my hands, and my head lowers just towards my right leg. The left heel is hopefully going down. If it doesn't go down for you, you might step a little bit out to the left side. If it's okay, then just keep it as it is. Okay. Lower the right foot, step the left foot besides it. Take a standing forward bend, support it. So that means I've got my hands either reaching to my bolster or my blocks, or I'm going to hold my elbows. Right? I'm holding something, I'm reaching to something and not just dangling. Now the spine feels that it's going forward and over. Weight of your head is heavy. Hamstrings are lifty. And the spine is kind of shifty. So you'll feel the hamstrings lifty, spine shifty, and the bones really tone up at the top piece of the thighs. You can kind of almost feel that here. Again, if you need to pass on this pose, it's too much, you can always come into not quite as far down as a forward bend, maybe hands above the knees, and you're here starting to stretch out the backs of your legs, so different support, okay? If you haven't changed the elbow crossing, change it now. Breathing. Head dangles. Okay, now as you lower your hands, get the blocks in, we're going to step the right foot back. And this time we'll go into kind of a similar, almost an exact same pattern. But we start with the back leg reaching down to the heel, and we get a feel of that left knee bending. So I want you to try to spend some energy noticing this side. It's hard not to compare, even just the feeling of the calf is different. Happens, you kind of try to figure out, how do I get that leg to agree like this other leg? You just kind of notice the work into that back calf. Yeah, I find my dominant leg, that my right side's dominant, is a walking pattern, is tighter calf for sure. So I noticed that instantly for me. Different parts of my calf are more wound up than my other side. So you might spend a little more time on that dominant leg calf, stretching it or massaging it, something you do. Okay, so get a feel here. And then let's see, we're going to bring that back knee down. So the blanket goes down or back behind, so it's below the knee. And if you need to scoot your left foot a little farther forward so the knee is not over the ankle. Last time some of us brought our blocks in a little bit so that we can find that back arch. And we're really trying to balance our activity level in the bones a bit differently right now for practice. So feel how the movement of that left knee just go a little bit forward. Just be careful nothing swings over the toes at all. Okay, now turn to the left arm goes up. Kind of know this is coming, but get a feeling of rotation. Right now we're adding on not only our hip stable, but our waist is turning. So feel that rotation through the rib cage, breathe. Okay, lower the hand. I know you could probably do this without putting the hand down and coming back up. Like you could maybe lift your back knee and then keep going, right? But I'm just trying to keep us on, coming back to something we haven't done for a while. And then using safety, right? So you lower your hand, then you come back up to twist. So the left foot, the heel is really pressing down. It's maybe a little shaky. You can start to straighten the left leg because that's eventually where this goes. I'm okay with keeping the knee bending, the back heel reaching, and just working on that bone circulation. It's not all about flexibility here. So when I lower the left hand, then I lower my back heel a little bit and lift the toes up on the left foot. They kind of work in sync with each other, these pose rhythms, but it's not always the same for everybody. So the toes are up. So if you can't see that, it's my left foot is flexing, toes are lifting, hands are on blocks. Of course, these all could be done without blocks, but your posture would be really, really rounded, like when your back would round over, you have even more rounding. So use the props. Okay, this might still have rounding. Okay, so we're trying to flex through that left foot. Breathe. Okay. Let's take a forward bend one more time before we go to the wall. So you're going to step down to the bottom of that, go through the foot, and then step the right foot forward. Just take a moment where your hands are downwards and your ribs are flowing towards the legs and your head tilts down. Just like anything that you would be tilting, right? Your neck is something that you tilt different directions. Yeah, feel that circulation of brain down, hips up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go to a wall space. This might be a little bit inconvenient for some of you to shift, but if you're close enough, what I want you to have is you could step back if you're really close to the wall and kind of get down to hands, knees, but you want to have a bolster. Your mat against the wall would be nice, and a block or ball. Okay, and a blanket, that would be good too. One blanket, two blankets, everything that you have except a belt. You don't need a belt. That's the one thing you don't need. And so come to your back so your spine is long. It's not, tucked in. It's not pressed into a rounded back. It's lengthened. I mean, we've been working standing for a tiny bit, and so that's going to round the back and arch the back. And now finally we can put our feet up at the wall, and the spine is in one design, right? It's supported entirely by the floor. With the feet up at the wall, it gives it a little bit more heavy support, right? Because now if your feet are up, you can feel that puts kind of weight into your back. So these are good, right? When our feet are up, then it actually collects that energy into the back and brings some balance. So what we'll do is we'll take a block or a ball between the knees. Whatever's close is probably your best choice. And I have my block narrow. And I want to be close enough to the wall that I feel like I could get to lift my hips kind of easily. I don't want to feel like it's a real tough thing to do. So when you lift up your hips, whether you have that lift, I have a blanket under my head. Nobody has to have that. If it feels too bulky, you can go without it. But I want you to lift your hips, and you'll feel that the legs have kind of a nice balance of tone, and the back could feel a little bit of pressure. Okay, so lower the spine back down. Okay, now if you have too much blanket, you need to kind of flatten that down lightly. You don't want the neck, because it's part of your spine here, right? Your upper vertebrae is part of the connection into your neck. So, all right, well, it is spinal, okay? All the way to the brainstem. So I have to keep this flat. It seems to be very flat. Okay, picky. All right. So if I push into the wall and lift up my hips, that's a little better. Okay, now notice how that pressure goes to your upper back, right? You're trying to open up to the front of the body. And when you bring your arms overhead, make sure that their head is comfortable. And then lower the spine down. So arms lower down with that motion of the hips with gravity. Let's go a few times and pick up your pace so that it's not quite as challenging. It's not as tough. You want to just get a feeling of movement, right? And the block could be exchanged for a ball if you're feeling like you're just not sure what's the right object. Okay, the block is pretty intense because it is a little harder to hold it. Okay, so next time you lift up, I want you to get a feel of how you climb into your shoulders. Okay, and notice what it feels like to have your feet at the wall for this version. It's pretty high up. Now we're going to take our other block. If you don't have the other block nearby, you can come down, put your feet at the wall, lift up, and then take that block you have with you under your pelvis. I have the block at the second height. Okay, it's a little different this week than we've done when we do the feet drop down and all that. I want you to focus on that you have a natural back arch now. You've got this lumbar arch, right? You've got the ribs lifting and the block between. And so you're keeping and maintaining that balance in the lower back, especially with your knees holding onto something. It's a spacer for your back because it's holding on. So if your knees were crossed or any other angle, it will mess a bit with your spine balance. So in our practice, we want to find things that are really balancing for our parts. So take a few moments like you're settling into this for the long haul. Feeling committed to being on that block. For me, it's the second setting. For some of you, it might be a little lower. It's like nice flat base when it's low. Feel the energy of squeezing the block. I want you to try to hold it for a few more moments if possible. Squeeze into the block or ball. Okay, so you feel that inversion, that little bit of energetic lift. Okay, arms are down by the sides, palms open. No big deal with the arms, just kind of let them be casual downwards, not above the shoulder line. Okay, now start to feel that your feet focus on their position to the wall versus squeezing the block or the ball. I know that that's still something you have to kind of monitor. At the worst case scenarios, it would fall out and probably it's not going to bounce back and hurt you. But if you feel like letting it go, that's okay. Just put your hands a little out to the side so nothing drops on them like a block. Okay, so some of us still have that item between the knees. So just get a feel of the feet pushing. Again, that's the key. And then as you lift up your hips, just a tiny bit, slide the block away and lower down through the spine. Take the knees into your chest, move the block aside, and then I want you to take the left leg, cross it over the right leg, and knees to the right to that bolster over there. Now, if this is not your version that you are preferring for this pose pattern, then what you can also do is push it a little farther back on your mat. Scoot back, let the right leg be straight, and then cross that left leg over to the right. You can also do that. And that's a kind of a nice, comfy way of taking that crossover. A little bit longer for the back. You can add a ball, you can add a sandbag, but you can still do the same things, variation with the knees crossing like this, like I mentioned in the beginning, to the right. So you can choose right leg straight or right leg bend. Both versions of the legs both bend. Okay. So stand up. Take a moment to get your weights. If they're twisted, untwist them. I don't think it would matter if your sandbag was twisted. And open the left arm. So a few poses that we're heading through the final spinal. And then let the shoulder roll down on that left side and feel where maybe it's easy for you to stretch your chest this way. If this is easy for you, then you might add in some stretches with this, like a hand at the wall and stretching your chest so you can keep improving that strength in your shoulder. Okay, because once it goes into a trouble area, then you'll need some rehab. So if this is okay with you, it doesn't pinch, doesn't feel pain, start adding things. Maybe sand you could add here, maybe you could do this at the wall. Breathing slow, ribs expand, and center. Okay, now head goes back to center. Hip has had probably a good couple minutes at the most here. So when we change the crossing, We're going to move the sand, if you have it, to the center, bring the feet back midline. For me, I'm gonna let my left leg straighten, move my bolster to the right side, or actually the other side, left side. Right side's gonna cross. And you decide if you are not taking this version, okay, and you're a little closer to the wall, what you'll be doing is just crossing the right leg over the left. And then the knees go to the left on the bolster, and the sand goes to the outer thigh. So you can choose, and you might even be able to kind of fumble the bolster around and use that into support in this version differently than I thought about. So you could be the creator of your own pose design here. Add a ball if you have it, open out the right arm and turn your head to the right. Even if it's a mild hip stretch for you, it's okay. You don't have to overdo it for benefit. So we have that circulation stimulating in the core body, and that breath lifting and lowering in the center. Okay, now when you do bring the head back in center, the sand aside, push that sandbag a little closer to the wall, move the ball, and then as your knees go back in center, I want you to bring the knees both equally in towards the chest, either hold below them or the back of the legs is the safest way. No knee compression. And then we roll to a side. And I want you to use that side roll to bring you up to move your bolster to the wall. So you want to have your bolster right up to it. It's completely stuck at the wall. There's no space in between. And you got your blanket. I would bring it to a nice level for neck support, right? So you can kind of think about your neck design, how it has its natural arch. This is pretty much where it meets. And then when I lift my hips up on the bolster, I'm leaning back so my rear is at the wall. I'm on the very edge of the bolster. It's like the other side of it lifts up. And then I scrunch down and swing the legs up the wall, and I still almost fall over to the other side. So you might find even after lots of doing, you still fall over and you just get back up. You get your hips back up. So find a nice balance for your back. Oops, I moved my bolster away. Mistaken. Okay, scoot my hips as close to the wall, my tush. And then once I arrive, I get my sand and I put it on my feet. Okay. So go for the pattern of support that feels good. If you have your legs up right now and you don't want to change anything, then don't add sand there. It feels fine. If you have a sandbag or rice, you could put it on your belly if you prefer. So the nice thing about those two versions is that the sand on the belly is good because we're working on that lymphatic drain into the abdominal kind of pool, which is like a lake right here. And then that flow back to the other lake, which is at the thyroid, like the throat. That little basin, that's a smaller pool, isn't it, than the belly. Okay, find a way to make the blanket supporting under your head, and then bring your arms to our first cactus of the day. So the elbows soften, the shoulders center back, and the eyes rest. Any hardware on your face should go away. Then you can let the skin around the eyes soften. If you have an eye pillow, you can place that over the lids. And then if you have your eyelids as your eye pillows, feeling that softness, resting the eyes. Even if you put your hand, your fingers on the eyelids and just kind of let them slide down and gently stretch. They spend most of the time being pulled back. And so naturally they'll have their wrinkles, right? And so you want to get a feel that you can soften the skin and the eyes, the sides of the eyes. And then when you breathe, rest your breath in your belly versus tightening your face with your breath. And let your abdomen soften with the movement of breath. And cover yourself up if you're cold. Now as the breath weaves in and it leaves, so let that weaving of breath and just the focus simplify your life. It's kind of a nice idea just to use that as a focal point anytime. Now, if you have sand on your feet, I want you to bend your knees. Be a little careful when you take your sand away. If you have any glasses nearby or anything, just shift it aside and bring your feet together, the soles of the feet, the knees out, the hands on the legs so they continue that circulation flush through the adductors because they were just lifting, well, they were inverting. And then as the knees go out, you kind of continue that flush. This is pretty lymphy tissue, adductors, leg pits. Yeah, and if the back of the pelvis feels like it's gripping up, then your feet are too far down. So you can always bring them a little bit higher. That might be easier. It's a nice complete release in the sacrum area versus pushing them down. Knees to the chest, roll to the side, let yourself push into your hands, come up and feel that position of your seat on the bolster, whether you want to move into the middle of the mat or against the wall. Let's take a moment where the spine has its natural curve, so you feel maybe just the shoulders that touch back, maybe your head, but I would encourage you to feel the natural curve. So the shoulders are back. This is our posture we're looking for. Shoulders are back. That's kind of it. The shoulders back. The neck has this supported angle here. So I'm always trying to move that back, my head back versus forward. And then as we move the breath into lifting up in the center body, bring your hands to slide from your legs to each other in front of the heart. And with a moment of bowing down to your heart center, surrender there. Just surrendering the focus inwards, bowing into your heart. Namaste. Thank you. Okay.